Before we get started in the Dharma talk, please join me in invoking the Buddha's name 3 times. Namo Buddha, Namo Shakyamuni Buddha, Namo Shakyamuni Buddha. Good afternoon, dear Thai, dear Sangha. So I believe the Venerable Abbot may have covered chapter 12, Devadatta, but I will be redoing this chapter. So chapter 12 of the Lotus Sutra is on Devadatta. So this chapter actually has two main stories. It has the story of Devadatta and the story of the young princess, Naga princess. So Devadatta's story is actually pretty famous. It's pretty well known. Devadatta was the cousin of the Buddha. And growing up with Gautama, the Buddha, he was very ambitious and charismatic and was always butting heads with the then Gautama because he wanted to be better than Gautama. But everything that Gautama did, Prince Siddhartha did, was much better. He was better at archery. He was better at learning the Vedas, learning horseback, and learning different languages. And he was just better at them, right? And so he was always in competition. And so even when the Buddha left the home life and became an ascetic, the Devadatta at the time was thinking, oh, now that he's gone, I'm in charge now, or I can be in charge now. I can be the better prince. But once the Buddha attained enlightenment and became the Buddha and started to propagate his teachings and build a Sangha, Devadatta was like, Devadatta still had the desire to beat the Buddha in some way, shape, or form. So even as a Buddha, even as a being who's outside of the political life and of princely duties and kingdom and whatnot, Devadatta was still not satisfied. And so he actually also left the home life and became a monk. And he was actually a pretty good monk. He was very well versed in the Dharma. He attained, at the time, not full enlightenment yet, but he attained a certain degree of enlightenment where he had what we call transcendental powers, right? And so he was actually pretty well gifted. However, even with that, Devadatta is known as in this chapter, Devadatta is mentioned as a good spiritual friend to the Buddha. Because in a past life, when the Buddha was a king of a kingdom, he sought the Dharma. He sought the flower adornment Dharma, Lotus Sutra. Wonderful Dharma, flower sutra. And so, while in that past life, when the Buddha was wanting to leave the home life, he made this proclamation that as he was seeking the Lotus Sutra, without ever flagging, so during those many kalpas, I constantly appeared as a ruler of a kingdom who made a vow to seek the unsurpassed Bodhi, his mind never wavering or turned aside, and his desire to fulfill the 6 paramittas, he diligently distributed alms, never stinging in heart, whether the gift was elephants or horses, the 7 rare treasures, countries, cities, wives, children, maid servants, men servants, or his own head, eyes, marrow, and brain, his own flesh and limbs. He did not begrudge even his own being and life. And so he was telling the past experiences that he did practice the 6 paramittas, the 6 perfections, right? The 6 paramittas are generosity, morality, patience, vigor, meditation, and wisdom. These are the 6 paramitas, the 6 perfections. As us being aspiring bodhisattvas, we are also aspiring to perfect these 6 perfections, these 6 paramitas. This is essentially our fuel that's driving our spiritual path. And so we use the 6 paramitas, the 6 perfections as our fuel. And so for life after life, the Buddha practiced and attempted to perfect these 6 perfections. And so during this life, when he was telling a story of his last life or one of his lives as a king, and he was seeking someone to teach him the Dharma, the unsurpassed Dharma. The seer Ashita came into the picture and said, I have a wonderful Dharma to teach you. If you are willing to spend your life, dedicate your life to me, and to obey me and follow my teachings, I will teach you this unsurpassed wisdom. And so the Buddha left, or the king at the time left his kingdom, gave the kingdom to his sons, and let them run it. And for the course of the king being with Ashita, he was able to perfect the 6 paramitas, and Ashita became a good spiritual friend. And so in the story, the Buddha was saying that Ashita at the time was now the Devadatta, and the king at the time was himself. And so because of Devadatta, because he was a good spiritual friend, he gave them the opportunity to perfect the paramitas and to attain the Lotus Sutra. And because of that, he was able to attain Buddhahood. And so the Buddha always mentions that Devadatta is a good spiritual friend. Even though Devadatta, being a terrible, very terrible person toward the end of his life, he still saw him as a good teacher. Not because he did terrible things, but he was a teacher in a back-ended way, right? So someone who would scold you or attempt to persuade you in some way, shape, or form, or to discourage you from your practice. But if you're able to hold up that endurance and hold up your faith in your practice and in yourself, even though someone's begrudging you and telling you all these bad things that you shouldn't do or you shouldn't practice, even though they are doing the opposite of what you should hear from a good spiritual friend, they become a good spiritual friend if your motivation does not vary, does not lessen because of their begrudging. And so even though someone's insulting your practice or insulting your beliefs or your opinions or whatever it may be, and they're begrudging you and they're putting you down, if you're able to withstand that, right, which is the vigor part in the 6 paramitas, if you're able to endure that and withstand that, then you are practicing this paramita, you're practicing the perfection, and you're perfecting it by not allowing what they're saying to hinder you. And so as we practice the 6 paramitas, and just maybe trying to decide if I want to go. There are 10 advantages to each of the 6 paramitas. And I'm not going to go into them in detail, but I will at least mention them. So the 10 advantages of the paramita of giving, well, before I do that. And so in the beginning of this chapter, when the Buddha, the king at the time, was saying that he's willing to give up his palace, his servants and elephants and all these things, right? He was already practicing true giving. First paramita of generosity, of dana. True giving is giving without, true generosity is true giving without the expectation of a return, right? That is true giving. And so he's able to give up his palace, his servants, his horses and elephants and everything that he held precious, right? Or believed to be precious. He was able to give that up for the sake of enlightenment, for the sake of attaining anuttara samyak sambodhi, right? Full true enlightenment. And so that's the type of generosity that we also need to follow. It's a true generosity. So if you're opening the door for someone, or you're giving someone something, or you're complimenting someone, you do it out of the purity of the action, right? Without the expectation of a thank you, right? How many times have you done or heard someone say when you're opening a door, right? And you're like, oh, you're welcome, right? Because they don't say thank you, right? It's not true giving. That's just you being an idiot. That's stupid giving. That's not true giving. And so, but we do that a lot of time. Think of even doing charity work. Some people brag about doing charity work. They go and they help, whether it's refugees or building a house for Habitat for Humanity. Right? If you're taking selfies, look at what I'm doing, look at what I'm doing, I'm helping all these people, and you're posting for the world to see, that's not true giving. You're doing it for the attention. You're doing it for, oh, you're such a good person. Oh, you're doing nice things for people. True giving is giving by being anonymous, essentially. Right? If you're doing it for any minute sense of gratitude from someone, or recognition, or praise, or even a simple comment, that good karma is already gone. Good karma doesn't even generate. The thought of, oh, they didn't even say thank you to me, is a negative karmic hit. Just the thought of saying, if you're giving someone, they don't even say thank you, if you even think about it, just the simple fact of them not saying anything, without even acknowledging, oh, they didn't even say thank you. Not even thinking those words, but just the perception or the idea of they did not say anything or do anything is already a bad karmic hit. So anyway, it's beside the point. But there are 10 advantages to each paramita. So the 10 advantages for the paramita of giving is one will be able to conquer the afflictions associated with stinginess. One will be able to maintain a continuous attitude of generosity. One will be able to share one's wealth with living beings without discrimination. One will be born in a wealthy, honorable family. In everyday life, one will always be generous and ready to give. One will be loved and cherished by the fourfold assembly. One will remain undaunted by the presence of the multitudes. One's good reputation will be heard everywhere. One's hands and feet will be soft and supple. One will encounter a genuine good spiritual teacher. The 10 advantages for the paramita of morality, which is essentially holding the precepts, that one will perfect omniscient wisdom. One will study what the Buddha had studied. One will not be despised by the wise. One will not retreat from one's resolve. One will dwell peaceful in proper conduct. One will cast aside birth and death. One will long for and delight in nirvana. One will attain an unfettered mind. One will attain supreme samadhi. One will not lack the wealth of faith. The advantages of morality, which this is going to turn into talk about the 6 perfections. Morality, or sila, right? It specifically in this context is about upholding the precepts, holding the precepts, right? Which is also a general description of this paramita anyway, but specifically in this context, it's referring to being able to uphold the precepts, right? What are the precepts? Most of you have taken precepts, right? And so you can answer this question by asking yourself, why did I take the precepts? What is the point? What is the benefit? What is the reason of taking these precepts? What is the difference between having precepts and not having precepts? If you've been coming here for 10,000 years and haven't taken the precepts, it's an exaggeration number. If you've come here for 10 years, and you're someone who has not taken precepts versus someone who's been here for a year and has taken the precepts, right? On a superficial level, who do we think is a better practitioner? Who do we think is more dedicated? The precept holder. But in fact, it's usually not the case. It's usually the case of those who have not taken precepts, who've been here for 10, 20 years, that are better practitioners than those who have taken the precepts. The precepts are not something, again, if you go back to the pediment of giving, generosity, this is the boasting of what I have, right? So if you're boasting that I have precepts, you're boasting that that you're someone that's important, that's part of the Sangha, that has rules and duties and responsibilities. If we're using that as an excuse, or we're holding on to that type of mindset, then you're no better than someone who's haven't taken the precepts. The precepts are, the only purpose of the precepts is to hold you accountable for your thoughts, speech, and actions. They don't give you power, they don't give you status, they don't give you rank. I mean, on a back-end level they do. But generally speaking, they don't. They're just rules, guidelines to help you keep yourself accountable for what you do in life. Because if you're in a situation that's difficult, whether it's an argument or whether you're trying to decide something or do something, if you are mindful of the precepts and mindful of these promises that you've made to yourself, and you make that decision or you do the action according to the precepts, then there is no way that you can do anything unwholesome. If you are bound, if you allow the precepts to help you make a decision, help you guide through a specific situation, or guide you through your life, there is not a single way that you can create an unwholesome deed by following the precepts. The precepts are there to ensure that you do not do anything unwholesome. This doesn't mean that we don't break precepts. Clearly we break precepts all the time, right? But the breakage is also about intention. Did you intend, was there an actual intention to break this precept? Was there intention to take life? Was there intention to steal something? Was there an intention to commit sexual misconduct? Was there an intention to lie? Was there an intention to be intoxicated? If you go out willingly doing something that you promised yourself you were going to do, you're useless. Your practice is useless. Why? Why take the precepts? Why follow the Dharma? The Dharma itself is just here to help you have a better life, to have a happier life, to have a clearer insight into the reality of things. But if you're doing things that are against that, doing things that are unhelpful, unbeneficial, unwholesome to your supposed end goal of enlightenment, you're just wasting time. Okay. The benefits of, which one are we on? Patience, the third paramita, is fire will not burn one. This is not a literal fire, but again, I'm not going into the details. Knives will not hurt you, also not literal. Poison will not harm you, also not literal. Water will not drown you, also not literal. Humans will protect one. One will obtain a splendid and majestic appearance. The lower destinies will be closed to one. One will be born in the Brahma heavens. One will be peaceful and joyful day and night, and one will never be separated from the joy and happiness. From joy and happiness. The 10 advantages for vigor or energy. One will not be defeated by others. One will be gathered in and protected by the Buddhas. One will be protected by non-humans. One will not forget the Dharma one hears. One will hear what one has not heard before. One's eloquence will increase. One will attain the essence of samadhi. One will have little troubles or sickness. One will be able to digest whatever one eats. One will grow like the udambara flower. The advantages for Are we on meditation already? Yes. Manages for meditation is one will settle oneself in the ritual of meditation. One will practice the attitude of compassion. One will have no regrets or afflictions. One will guard the six sense faculties. One will attain bliss even in the absence of food. One will leave love and desire behind. One's cultivation of dhyana will not be in vain. Dhyana is meditation. One will be released from demonic influences. One will peacefully abide in the states of a Buddha. One will attain perfect liberation. And the benefits for the sixth and last paramita of prajna, or wisdom, is one will not grasp at the notion of giving. One will not become bound up by the precepts. One will not become attached to the power of patience. One will be vigorous in body and mind. In dhyana, meditation, one will abide nowhere. Demons will not disrupt one. Others' opinions will not move one. One will reach the end of birth and death. One will practice ever-increasing compassion, and one will take no delight in the stage of the two vehicles. It's a lot of advantages to the six paramitas, don't you think? Advantages that we want to all attain. Do we not? So anyway, the Buddha was able to perfect all these six perfections and have those 10 advantages for each. Those 60 advantages, right, he's had. And he thinks this attainment because of Devadatta. And so even though Devadatta was a bad person, he was a good spiritual teacher. Devadatta is one of the worst characters in Buddhist history because he's one of few who've committed the 5 heinous sins, or the 5 unredeemable sins in Buddhism. Pop quiz. What are the 5 unredeemable sins? That's 2. It's 3. Nope. 4. Nope. You may not get this one. This one's not a very... Causing division, or a schism. Yeah, so it's killing one's mother, killing one's father, killing an arhat, killing a Buddha, and causing a division in the Sangha. So the Devadatta committed all these 5 sins. And so anyone who commits these five sins is an immediate rebirth in hell. The fraction of the second that they close their eyes of death, hell blazings. But Devadatta, even though he did not kill his direct mother, his direct father, or an arhat. I'm sorry, he did kill an arhat. He killed a nun who was an arhat. But he worked with Prince Ajatasattu. Hold on, I wrote it down. Yeah, Ajatasattu, Prince Ajatasattu, I can't say that name. Because Devadatta attempted to take over the Sangha, he wanted to be in charge. He wanted to be the next head monk. But at the time, there was no head monk. Even the Buddha himself, he didn't consider himself the head monk, right? All the senior monastics were essentially the leaders of the Sangha. But Devadatta wanted to be the foremost. And then at one point, he even attempted to persuade the Buddha to add even stricter ascetic practices to the monks. And the Buddha denied those changes because he was like, they won't really benefit the monastics. But Devadatta, and then, because he was very charismatic, and he was, again, highly attained, right? He used that charisma to pretty much steal about 500 monks from the current Sangha and create his own Sangha. But that didn't last long. So eventually Shariputra and Moggallana went to his new Sangha to bring back the majority of those monks. But because of this, Devadatta became extremely angry. He was like, now he's real pissed. Now he really wants to get rid of the Buddha. And so he went to Prince Ajatasattu, who was still the prince at the time. So his father, King Bimamsara, was still ruling. And so Devadatta and the prince got together and were like, listen, you need to take over your kingdom and so that you can have power over the Sangha and give me control. And so the prince essentially attempted to take the king's life, but did not succeed. And so then instead he threw him into the prison and locked him up. And then eventually his mother, who was still alive at the time, would sneak food and drink into the prison to give to the king because he wasn't getting any food or nourishment. But eventually, unfortunately, got caught. And so the king died of starvation, and then the mother also died as well. And because they died, because of Devadatta, right, because Devadatta initiated that the prince tried to take over, because indirectly he caused the death of a mother and father. So he committed 2 sins, the unredeemable sins. And then he killed a bhikshuni who was an arhat, a nun who was an arhat, so that's 3 sins. And then he also had attempted 3 times to take the life of the Buddha. And one of those times, he didn't kill him, but he shed the Buddha's blood, which is technically the sin. It's like killing the Buddha or shedding their blood. So he committed the 3rd sin. And because he took the 5 arhats away, or 500 monastics away from the Sangha into his own Sangha, he created a schism. There was a division. And so he broke all 5 sins, right? And so even when we do the repentance, for instance, when we do morning, evening chanting, the repentance part in itself is mentioning whether you do it yourself directly or indirectly by telling others, right? For in this existence of mine or in my previous existence in samsara since time without beginning, for any sins committed by myself or by others whom I've ordered or reviewed with connivance, right? And so then that includes the taking items from the Sangha or the Sanghans, committing the 5 unredeemable sins, the 10 evil deeds, and any other actions, whether hidden or not hidden, right? And so there's even though you may not kill somebody directly, but indirectly via her involvement, just like the law, right? You may not have killed someone, but if you were co-planning to kill someone with someone else, you're still going to get in trouble, right? And so there's still some responsibility there. I forgot where I was going with that. So anyway, Devadatta was a good spiritual friend to the Buddha, right? And so he praises him. Usually, when we read about in the 8 sufferings of life, right? There's a suffering of birth, sickness, aging, death, being away from loved ones, being with those that we don't like, not being able to attain what we want to attain, and the flourishing of the 5 skandhas, 5, what's the translation of skandhas? Aggregates. 5 senses too, yes. And so sometimes when we hear the story, we're thinking, oh, the Buddha was with someone that he did not like. That's not true. The Buddha did not hate Devadatta. He loved Devadatta. Devadatta was his cousin, literally family, right? And even though he did things that were unbeneficial to himself and to the Sangha, in an indirect, weird, back-ended way, he helped the Buddha become a better teacher because Devadatta was opposing, begrudging, was throwing things, or committing all these different sins, but it did not lower the Buddha's patience or compassion toward Devadatta. He still loved him. He's like, you're a great teacher, thanks. And so if you think of someone giving you a hard time about anything in life, just think of it as a lesson. Or even though they are not necessarily, right, it could be a discouragement, but if it's something that you're truly passionate about, truly wanting to commit to, then regardless of what they say, it's not going to make a difference. So that's the first part of the story. The second part of the story is about the Naga princess, right? Who, at the time, I can't think of it is. I believe it was Manjushri, who was. So the moral of the story of the entire Lotus Sutra is that anybody is capable of attaining Buddhahood, right? Everybody has Buddha nature. Everyone has the potential to become a Buddha. And so in this chapter, it's discussing that even someone as horrid as Devadatta, he too was still predicted to attain Buddhahood. So at the end of that story, the Buddha prophesies that even though Devadatta did all these horrible things, and he committed the 5 unredeemable sins, he too will still become a Buddha. And he lists his Dharma name, his Buddha name, he listed the land he's going to rule over. And so there's no one denying that even a terrible person who has committed heinous acts in life still has the capability to become a Buddha, to become one of the most compassionate and loving beings in the universe, right? And on the other hand of the story, it's saying that regardless of age and gender, you're also able to become a Buddha. And as an example to this, there's the Naga princess who's 8 years old, right? And at the time when Manjushri was debating with another bodhisattva about this. And so when they're debating about it, the Naga girl appeared in front of the assembly, bowed to the Buddha, bowed to the Buddha and praised the Buddha, and gave the Buddha a jewel, priceless jewel, right? And so when she gave the Buddha the priceless jewel and the Buddha accepted, she turned around to Manjushri and to the other bodhisattva and asked them, the time that I gave the Buddha this jewel, how long did that take? Was it quickly or was it not quickly? And they're like, yes, it was very quickly. And so she was like, well, even quicker than that, watch me become, because the argument was that a woman could not become a Buddha, right? And so she's like, well, watch me become a man, perfect all the 6 perfections, perfect all the bodhisattva practices, and become a Buddha. And so in the span of fractions of minutes, she did all those. She became a man, she became a holy bodhisattva, she achieved all the bodhisattva practices, and achieved all the levels of enlightenment to become a Buddha, became a Buddha. And so she was basically insinuating that it doesn't matter how old you are, it doesn't matter who you are, it doesn't matter what you are. The capability of becoming a Buddha is within us all. It is only by the sheer diligence of your practice that you're able to achieve it, right? Which is the paramita vigor, energy, right? Because vigor is to essentially finish what you started. How many times have we started a project and midway through we're like, just sick of it, leave it alone. I'm sticking it in a corner and start another project, right? Or you do something and you just kind of like let it linger for a while and go back to it every few years. What should have taken you a month took you 7 years to finish. Or even our spiritual practice, right? It's common for someone for anyone to start anything new, whether it's a new hobby, a new profession, a new job, a new skill, or a new religion, right? At the beginning of it, we all have this honeymoon phase, right? We're really excited about it, we're really happy, we're really diligent, and we put in all the effort and time and patience, but after a while we're like, oh, okay, it's time to get lazy. You just let yourself go, right? Gained 100 pounds, you stop showering often, your hair is down to your knees, I don't know. Same concept. And so even in our practice, right, Buddhism is an extremely vast and comprehensive practice. There's no doubt in that. And it's not easy, but it's also not difficult. It just requires enough motivation, enough efforts, enough vigor, energy to do it. And it requires to practice all the 6 perfections: generosity, morality, patience, energy, meditation, and wisdom. Patience is also important. You have to have patience with yourself. There's so many times I hear people say that they just don't know what to do in meditation. They don't know how to progress in meditation. I've been meditating for a year. I've been meditating for 5 years. I've been meditating for 10 years. I don't know how to advance. But they say that because they don't have the patience with themselves in order to actually do what they need to do to advance. Like, yeah, I've been meditating for a year and I can't seem to advance. Well, how long are you meditating for? 10, 15 minutes. Well, that's why. 10, 15 minutes ain't going to get you anywhere. 10, 15 minutes doesn't even get you to HEB down the road. You think you're going to achieve nirvana in 10 to 15 minutes? Bye. It's not going to happen. And so, but then if someone were to sit for 30 to an hour, right, then the hindrances start arising. So it's really only about at the 30-minute mark and higher that the hindrances, the 5 hindrances, really start to come and do their thing. And the hindrances is what causes people to lose patience with themselves, right? Do you remember what the hindrances are? Another pop quiz question. Y'all are so fired. That's 1. 2. 3. Nope. No. That's sloth. 2 big ones. Desire, sensual pleasure, or desire, and ill will. Right? Ill will is also aversion. So when you're sitting in meditation for a long period of time, your back starts to ache, or you start to fall asleep, right, which is sloth and aversion. Because when we're sitting and our back starts to ache, or our mind starts to wrestle with itself and here and there, by saying, oh, I wish my back didn't hurt, or I wish my mind was clearer or quieter, that's aversion. You're averse to what's happening. There's no point in being averse to what's happening. It's acknowledge what's happening. If you're just acknowledging it and not really doing anything about it, it's not going to get any better. Right? If you cut an artery and just let it bleed out, there's nothing you can do about it. You're going to die. You have to do something in order to stop the bleeding from dying. Yes? So just think that you're bleeding out every time you're meditating. Think that anything that happens, any of the hindrances that arise, just imagine that being that you're bleeding out. Your back hurts, you're bleeding out. What are you going to do about it? You're tired, you're bleeding out. What are you going to do about it? You have a desire to be somewhere else that's not here, you're bleeding out. What are you going to do about it? Right? Stop the bleeding. I need to find my clock. Remind me to find my clock. Not that it's a now that I say that out loud, I'm like, wait a minute. That's a desire right there. I desire my clock. Anyway. So this chapter is, even though the main story, the chapter name I don't agree with. The chapter is called Devadatta, but I don't agree with that name of this chapter. Because the chapter isn't really about Devadatta. It's just a mention of Devadatta. That he was a good spiritual teacher. But again, the chapters recognize that you can be a terrible, murderous person and achieve Buddhahood. You can also be an 8-year-old little girl and also achieve Buddhahood. So it's saying, it's just affirming that everyone has Buddha nature, has the potential to become a Buddha. What you do in order to fulfill that potential is up to you. We can't just come to the temple, chant and pray and meditate and hope for the best. It doesn't work that way. If you practice, even if you practice just a little bit, 10, 15, 30, at least 30 minutes a day, if you're reading and practicing, right? And work toward perfecting the 6 perfections, if you're able to do that, and after some time, right, and you start to really perfect not just the 6 perfections, but the other components. What also was mentioned in here was so after the story of the king, the Buddha said to the monks, the king at the time was I myself, and the seer was the man who is now Devadatta. All because Devadatta was a good friend to me, I was able to come fully endowed with the 6 paramitas, right? So he perfected the 6 perfections, the 6 paramitas, with pity, compassion, joy, and indifference. Which is what? The 4 immeasurables. With the 32 features, the 80 characteristics, the purple-tinged golden color, the 10 powers, the 4 kinds of fearlessness, the 4 methods of winning people, the 18 unshared properties, and the transcendental powers and the powers of the way. So the fact that I have attained impartial and correct enlightenment that can save living beings on a broad scale is all due to Devadatta, who is a good friend. And so when we practice these teachings and the 6 paramitas and the 4 immeasurables, it should be the other way around. So if you're a preceptor, if your disciple has taken the 5 precepts, right, your main fuel is the 4 immeasurables: compassion, loving kindness, joy, and equanimity, right? That's what you try to perfect. And when you take bodhisattva vows, then you, at the time, hopefully you're at least to a degree of realization of the 4 immeasurables. Now you start working the 6 paramitas, the 6 perfections, and you work toward perfecting those. When you start to practice and really practice, be diligent with that practice, and put in the work and the efforts, those characteristics will naturally start to just be part of you as a being. You don't have to tell people, oh, I practice these perfections, I practice these immeasurables, or that I'm very learned in these teachings. You will just naturally kind of just spew out these characteristics naturally. People can, when people speak to you or see you in a distance, for instance, right? The same way when the Buddha first became enlightened and went back to his 5 disciples, who basically kicked them out because he ate a bowl of rice when he discovered the middle way. From the distance, they're like, oh, look, it's Gautama, the oath breaker, right? He's come back to beg to be back within us. But as he drew closer, he started to kind of shine this radiance of him. There was this radiance that was coming off of him, this kind of halo. And so as the 5 disciples saw this, they knew that something had changed. They knew that Gautama has now, or Siddhartha has now achieved his vow. Now he's a Buddha. This was the same thing when we start to practice the perfections and the 4 immeasurables, right? In my personal practice, in my personal form of tradition, I combine the 4 immeasurables and 6 paramatas to create the 10 perfections of a bodhisattva. Because these are the 10 elements, the 10 characteristics that if we're able to succeed and achieve and perfect them, there's no going back. You've stumbled upon the path of irreversibility, meaning that there is no way for you to be born into a lower realm of existence. There is no way that you will ever be able to fault in your practice. There is no way that you would never be able to achieve bodhisattvahood or Buddhahood. And so when we practice more and more, right, you don't have to tell people anything. One of the things about Zen Buddhism, for instance, is the teacher-to-student transmission, right? There's this, I can just look at someone, and if they are at least realized enough that I can transmit the way of enlightenment to them. The same way the Buddha did with Moggallana. The Buddha held up a lotus flower, and the whole assembly was like, WTF, like what's the Buddha doing? But the only person that recognized what that symbolism mean was Moggallana, who at the time smiled, cried, and bowed to the Buddha, and the Buddha knew that he attained enlightenment. So he was the first person to attain enlightenment via that teacher-to-student transmission. The same way, eventually, when we all become highly realized, we can just look at each other and be like, yo, I got the secret recipe. Now you got the secret recipe. And she can go to someone else and she's like, hey, yo, I got the secret recipe. Here's the secret recipe. The point is there's this countenance that we have, this radiance that you will achieve when you start to truly practice and truly start to achieve and apply the four measurables and six perfections to your life. There's no teaching needed. The simple way of how you walk, how you stand, how you talk and sit and engage in the world in itself is a teaching. Okay, I'll stop talking now. Questions, concerns, emotional outbursts? Yes, ma'am.
So I just wanted to share on the precepts, but when it comes to the precepts, one of the things that it helps me out, the way that I look at it is like, instead of having to make a decision every time I'm in a bad situation, you know, I'm gonna lie, I'm gonna steal, I'm gonna be mean to someone, I'm gonna break alcohol, whatever it is, right? I don't have to make that decision over and over in my life. I've already made it. When I'm even tempted, I'm like, oh, I don't do that. I just say that to myself, oh, I don't do that. Why? Because I took the precepts. I don't have to go into a long explanation in my head about it, but it just deter me from it. Because sometimes those bad habits I have. Under the road, like somebody road rages, and I'm like, oh, you person, you know. And then I'm like, oh, wait, I don't do that. I don't do that. And I just let it go. And so that's the way that the precepts help me, is I don't have to make a decision every time. I'm just a person that's already decided I want to do that. And so that I just wanted to share that with you. The question that I do have is about karma. And so something that confuses me is I understand that as you pass, you know, there's good karma, there's bad karma, there's the delusion of karma, all this stuff, right? But what I see in life is people that have wealth or people that have that privilege, and I look at them and I'm like, were you really good before? Like, did they have really good karma? But they're total baby. And I think that kind of like that kind of privilege spoils the person, so would karma really set you up for that?
Fortunately, yes.
Yeah, because it seems like it would be more challenging.
It's a challenge for you, not a challenge for them. If we think back to the 6 realms of existence, for instance, someone who is fairly well off and successful and wealthy in life, but they're a terrible person, according to the 6 realms of existence, they fall into the category of asuras, right? Asura, right? Which is like a demigod, right? Or titans, sometimes is the direct translation. Why Titan? I don't know, but whatever. It's a cool movie, but not anyway. But it's because they're always fighting among themselves, right? The rich are always fighting the other rich, are always fighting other rich people, because they're trying to take their riches away from them, right? And when someone's rich, they're not rich enough. $1 billion is not enough. I want 2 billion. 2 billion is not enough. I want 5 billion. Why? It's just they're trying to achieve a type of status and glory and recognition. Right, it's just the wanting. They don't need the money, they just want it so they can say, I have it. What are you going to do with it? You do not need $10 billion. What are you going to do with that much money? I mean, obviously there's a lot you can do, but you spend it, sorry? You can build a rocket and go to space, but then what? 5 people can go at a time? Because you still did good things in the past life.
But hopefully you carry over the 6, the generosity that you don't do it. Or is it just another opportunity to practice harder?
Yes, because your karma isn't just one way or the other. It's not just bad or not just good, right? It's interconnected. It works together hand in hand. So sometimes you may have more good karma than bad karma, or more bad karma than good karma, but they can simultaneously work in the same life, which is why someone who's very rich is also an idiot, right? Who's ungenerous, right? But in the past life, they were very generous, but they also did something that was bad that caused them to be a terrible person, but still had money, right? Same way, like if you go to school, you can have a PhD degree, but not do anything with it. You worked for it, but there's no recognition. Yes, sir. Yeah.
Sounds like the story of David John.
I'm sorry?
Sounds like the story of David John.
Right.
You know, all the spiritual aspects, and those are the 3 poisons. You did things that work.
Right. Yeah, because in Deva's past life, he was a seer. He was a highly recognized, highly famous seer who had the knowledge of the Lotus Sutra, which is one of the highest knowledges you can have. But yet, in the next life, he committed all the 5 unredeemable sins. So he was good? Not all good. Yes.
So, the family of the Naga princess coming to a bunch of Buddhists to be, we talk about being a shura. So for a Naga, which is a snake, which is essentially a snake woman, to come to a bunch of Buddhists, they must have been kind of amazed, because it wasn't like Nagas have like certain stigmas or stereotypes that really just shocked everybody that this snake woman came to the assembly.
You're thinking too much into it, buddy. There's so many. Culturally, it is a specific race of creatures.
One's born as a Sora has certain type of qualities, so I'm thinking maybe a Naga also has certain type of qualities that also make them shocked to see a Naga, especially a Naga princess, the princess of the Naga, to be sitting in front of the assembly. What's her name?
Well, she didn't come as a snake, if that's what you're insinuating. That's not correct either. It's also just a story. Right? So. They are all suras with animal instincts, yes. Yes, ma'am. Well, I've not perfected all the perfections.
Which one is toughest?
Patience. For sure. But it's also not patience in the sense of being able to stand in a long line for an hour, right? That's not the type of patience that perfection is referring to. Patience here is more like the ability to endure, right? And so the ability to, I'm trying to remember where it's at. Did I write it down? To bear up under insult, to endure what you cannot endure, right? So it's not just being able to sit in a line for an hour waiting for the queue to tally up. It's be able to endure what people throw at you. Be able to endure just like Devadatta, who is discouraging to the practice, but the Buddha was able to endure that. So if someone's discouraging in your practice, saying that your practice is wrong or religion is wrong or whatever, and be able to endure that with confidence and compassion and morality, and know that regardless of what you think, I believe this is the right way, right? That's the type of patience that this is referring to, not just the regular type of patience, but also regular type of patience is what I suffer from. I'm able to endure, right? And I've said this many times. I love it when people insult me. I love it. I think it's great. I don't mind the insults, right? It's a beautiful way to truly put your practice into action. So when people talk behind my back, and I know when they talk behind my back, I'm not stupid, right? I can tell when someone has said something about me or whatever it is. I don't care. Do it. If that makes you feel better, it makes me feel better too, right? So thankfully, that part of it, I'm good with. But it's the driving behind slow people that I really need to work on. Did you comment something? Is it your hand? I saw a hand somewhere.
When you were speaking about patience, it's more of the sense of being able to bear with what the world is currently like for years on a macro scale. I know I've spoken to some about the frustrations about the state of the world and the conflicts in it, and to be able to make the patience and endurance in that sense is actually quite answering my dilemma.
Mm-hmm.
And to be able to still hold true and understanding of how the Dharma is, and that everything does follow a set path, I suppose.
Right. And it's also the endurance against nonviolence, right? So if someone hits you, for example, you don't want to hit back. If someone slaps you, what do we typically say? Turn the other cheek. Why? Because the other cheek who didn't get slapped is now jealous. So it's like, you know what? Just slap this cheek too. So now both of them got slapped. That's funny. Yes, sir. Blame society. I don't know. No idea. Why? Doesn't agree with you? So what? What does that person saying have anything to do with you? How's their words of discouragement or inaccuracy or something that goes against your beliefs hurt you in any way? I'm sorry? Neighbor's dumb. It is what it is. Okay, we are past time, so we will transcend the mirror and then go to chanting. Namo Shakyamuni Buddha Namo Shakyamuni Buddha Namo Shakyamuni Buddha. For any positive karmic action we've accumulated here today, we wish to transfer the merit to all sentient beings and wish them full enlightenment. Section 3, right? The incense in the censer now is burning, all the Dharma realm in every place, auspicious clouds appearing, our sincere intention thus fulfilling, as all Buddhas now show their perfect body. Om eschew the incense cloud canopy, Bodhisattva and gray Bodhisattva. In gratitude we offer this incense to all Buddhas and Bodhisattvas throughout space and time. May it refract as earth herself, reflecting our careful efforts, our wholehearted mindfulness, and the fruit of understanding slowly ripening. May we and all beings be companions of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. May we awaken from forgetfulness and realize our true home. Om eschew the eternally abiding Buddhas, the supreme Dharma usually sung throughout the Dharma realm and the realm of empty space and 3 periods of time. Homage to the fundamental teacher Shakyamuni Buddha Maitreya, honored future Buddha Manjushri, great wisdom, Bodhisattva, universal great conduct, Bodhisattva, all Dharma guarding Deva Bodhisattva, and the glorious mountain assembly of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. Homage to Amitabha Buddha in the land of ultimate bliss, Avalokiteshvara, great compassion, Bodhisattva, great strength, Bodhisattva, earth's Lord, great vow, Bodhisattva, and the assembly of great pure sea-like Bodhisattvas. Please sit down. The unsurpassed, profound, and wonderful Dharma is difficult to encounter in hundreds of millions of eons. I now see and hear it, receive and Shakyamuni Go to tab 3, page 50. Namo Lotus Assembly of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. Namo Lotus Assembly of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. Namo Lotus Assembly of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. The Sutra of the Lotus of the Wonderful Law, Chapter 8, Prophecy of Enlightenment for 500 disciples. At the time the world honored one spoke and said, "You monks, listen carefully. The way followed by the sons of the Buddha, because they are well learned in expedient means, is wonderful beyond conception. They know how most beings delight in a little law and are fearful of great wisdom. Therefore the Bodhisattvas pose as voice hearers or Paiteka Buddhas, employing countless expedient means to convert different kinds of living beings. They proclaim themselves to be voice hearers and say they are far removed from the Buddha, and so bring emancipation to immeasurable multitudes, allowing them all to achieve success. Limited in aspiration, lazy and indolent, though the multitudes are bit by bit, they are led to the attainment of Buddhahood inwardly. The secret, the sons act as bodhisattvas, but outwardly selves as voice hearers. They seem to be lessening desires out of hatred for birth and death, but in truth are purifying the Buddha lands before the multitude. They seem possessed of the three poisons or manif, the signs of heretical views. My disciples in this manner use expedient means to save living beings. If I were to display all the different ways, the many manifestations they display in converting others, the living beings who heard me would be doubtful and perplexed. And now this Purna in the past diligently practiced the way under 1,000 million books, proclaiming and guarding the law of those Buddhas in order to seek out unsurpassed wisdom. He went to where the Buddhas were, became a leader among their disciples, one of wide knowledge and wisdom. He showed no fear in what he expounded and was able to fill the assembly. Never was he weary or disheartened in assisting the work of the Buddhas. Already he had passed over into great transcendental powers and possessed the four unlimited kinds of knowledge. He knew whether the capacities of the multitude were keen or full, and constantly preached the pure law he expounded. He's teaching a multitude of thousands of millions, causing them to reside in the great vehicle law, and himself purifying the Buddha lands. And in the future too he will offer alms to immeasurable countless Buddhas, protecting, aiding, and proclaiming, and himself purifying the Buddha lands, constantly employing various expedient means, preaching the law without fear, saving multitudes beyond calculation, causing them to realize comprehensive wisdom. He will offer alms to the thus come ones, guarding and upholding the treasure storehouse of the law, and later he will become a Buddha seven treasures, the kalpa will be named treasure bright. The multitude of bodhisattvas will be very numerous, numbering immeasurable millions, all having passed over into great transcendental power, endowed with dignity, virtue, strength, filling the entire land. Voice hearers too will be numberless, with the things and eight emancipations, having attained the four unlimited kinds of knowledge. Such as these will be the monks of the order. The living beings of that land will all be divorced from lewd desires. They will be a pure matter by the process of transformation, with all the features adorning their bodies with dharma, joy, and meditation, delight to feed upon. They will have no thought of other. There will be no gender there, and none of the evil paths of existence. The monk Logna has won all these blessings to the full, and will acquire a pure land such as this, with its great multitude of worthies and sages of the countless path pertaining to it. I have now spoken only in brief. At the time Ajanta, Kundiana, and the others spoke and said, have heard the sound of this prophecy, assuring us of unsurpassed ease and tranquility. We rejoice and gain what we never had before, and make obeisance to the Buddha of measureless wisdom. Now in the presence of the world honored, we bewail our faults and errors of the Buddha's immeasurable treasure. We have gained only a small portion of nirvana, and like ignorant and foolish persons have taken that to be sufficient. The poor and impoverished man who went to the house of a close friend, the house was a very proper, with many trays of delicacies. The friend took a priceless jewel, sewed it in the lining of the poor man's robe, gave it without a word, and then went away. And the man, being asleep, knew nothing of. After the man had gotten up, he journeyed here and there to other countries, seeking food and clothes to keep himself alive, finding it very difficult to provide for his livelihood. He made do with what little he could get, and never hoped for anything finer, unaware that in the lining of his robe he had a priceless jewel. Later the close friend who had given the jewel happened to meet the poor man, and after sharply rebuking him, showed him the jewel sewed in the robe. When the poor man saw the jewel, his heart was filled with. He was rich, possessed of wealth and goods sufficient to satisfy the five desires. We are like that man through the long night, the world honored one, constantly in his pity teaches and converts us, causing us to plant the seeds, unsurpassed aspiration. But because we are without wisdom, we are unaware of this, unknowing, having gained a small portion of nirvana, we are satisfied and seek nothing more. But now the Buddha awakens us, saying, this is not really extinction. When you have gained the Buddha's unsurpassed wisdom, then that will be true extinction. Now we have heard from the Buddha these prophecies and descriptions of adornment, and how each in turn will bestow a prophecy on his successor and embody. And we are filled with joy. Chapter 9, prophecies conferred to learners and adepts. At the time the world honored one spoke to the assembly and said, I now say to the monks that Ananda upholder the Buddhas, and after will achieve Anuttara Samyak Sambodhi. His name will be mountain, sea, wisdom, unrestricted power, King Buddha. His land will be Buddhas in numbers like kanji senses. Buddha will possess great dignity and virtue. His renown will fill the 10 direct. His lifespan will be immeasurable because he takes pity on living beings. His correct law will endure for twice his lifespan. His counterfeit law twice that as numerous as kanji sans will be the countless living beings who in the midst of the Buddha's law will pant causes and conditions leading to the Buddha way. At the time Ananda spoke in verse saying, the world honored one very rarely met with has caused me to recall the past law. The immeasurable Buddhas as though I had heard it today. Now I have no more doubts but dwell securely in the Buddha way. As an expedient means I act as attendant, guarding and upholding. At the time the world honored one spoke in verse saying, when I was crowned Prince Rahula was my eldest son. Now that I have gained the Buddha way, he receives the Dharma and is my Dharma son. In existences to come he will see immeasurable billions of Buddhas, eldest son to all of them. With a single mind he will seek the Buddha way, the convert actions of Rahula I alone am capable of knowing. He manifests himself as my oldest son, showing himself to living beings. Measurable millions, thousands and thousands of blessings beyond count. He dwells securely in the Buddha's law and thereby seeks the unsurpassed way. These 2,000 voice hearers who now stand in my presence, on all of them I bestow a prophet. Through existence they will become Buddhas. The Buddhas to whom they offer alms will be numerous as the dust particles of 50 worlds. They will guard and uphold the Dharma storehouses, and after that will gain Anuttara Samyak Sambodhi. Have a land in one of the 10 directions, and all will share the same name and designation. At the same time will sit in the place of practice, and thereby will gain proof of unsurpassed wisdom. All will be named jeweled sign in their lands, and disciples are correct law and counterfeit law will all be identical and without difference. All will employ transcendental powers. Living beings in the 10 directions, the renown will spread everywhere around, and they will enter nirvana. At the time when the 2,000 learners and adepts heard the Buddha bestow this prophecy, they danced for joy and spoke in verse form saying, world honored bright lamp of wisdom, we hear your voice bestowing this prophecy, and our hearts are filled with joy as though we were bathed in sweet dew. Chapter 10, the teacher of the law. Time the world honored one spoke to the assembly and said, if you wish to abide in the Buddha way and successfully gain the wisdom that comes of itself, you should be constantly diligent, offering alms to those who embrace the Lotus Sutra. If you have a wish to quickly obtain wisdom regarding all species of things, you should embrace the sutra, and at the same time give alms to those who do so. If one is capable of embracing the Lotus Sutra of the wonderful law, know that such a person is an envoy of the Buddha who thinks with pity of living beings. Those who are capable of embracing the Lotus Sutra of the wonderful law relinquish their claim to the Pure Land, and out of pity for living beings are born here. Know that persons such as these freely choose where they will be born, and choose to be born in this evil world so they may broadly pass law. You should offer heavenly flowers and incense, scrubs decked with heavenly treasures, the wonderful treasure hoards of heaven as alms to those who preach the law in the evil world following my extinction. There are those who can embrace the sutra. You should press your palms together in reverence and offer alms to them as you would to the world-honored one, the best delicacies, all that is sweet and tasty, along with various types of clothing you should offer as alms to those Buddha sons in hopes to hear a moment of their preaching. If there are those in a latter age who can accept and embrace the sutra, they are my envoys sent out among the people to perform the thus come one's work. If face of a kalpa, one should constantly harbor a mind destitute of good, and with angry look should revile the Buddha. He will be commit an offense of immeasurable gravity. But if toward those who read, recite, and embrace this Lotus Sutra, one should even for a moment direct evil words, his offenses will be far great. There is someone who seeks the Buddha way, enduring a certain kalpa, presses palms together in my presence, and recites numberless verses of praise. Because of these praises of the Buddha, he will gain immeasurable blessings. And if one lauds and extols those hold this sutra, his good fortune will be even greater. For the space of 80 million kalpas, with one shapes and sounds, with that which is pleasing to smell, taste, and touch, offer alms to the upholders of the sutra. If you have offered alms in this manner and have heard the teachings for even a moment, you will experience joy and good fortune, saying, I have gained great benefit. Medicine King, I say to you, I have preached various sutras, and among those sutras the Lotus is the foremost. Chapter 11, the emergence of the treasure tower. The time in the Buddha's presence there was a tower adorned with the 7 treasures, 500 yojanas in height and 250 yojanas in width and depth, that rose up out of and stood suspended in the air. Various kinds of precious objects adorned it. It had 5,000 railings, 1,000, 10,000 rooms, and numberless streamers and banners decorated it. All 4 sides emitted a fragrance of tama, patra, and sandalwood that pervaded the whole world. Its banners and canopies were made of the 7 treasures of gold, silver, lapis, seashell, agate, pearl, and carnelian. In it reached to the heavenly palaces of the 4 heavenly kings, the gods of the Triasrimsha heaven, rained out heavenly mandarava flowers as an offering to the treasure tower. The other heavenly beings and the dragons, yakshas, gandharvas, asuras, garudas, kinnaras, mahuragas, human and non-human beings, an assembly of thousands and thousands, millions, offered all kinds of flowers, incense, necklaces, streamers, canopies, and music, all songs. Treasure at the time a loud voice issued from the treasure tower, speaking words of praise. Excellent Shakyamuni, world-honored one, that you can take the great wisdom of equality, Allah, to instruct the bodhisattvas, guarded and kept it in mind by the Buddhas, the Lotus Sutra. Wonderful law, and preach it for the sake of the great assembly. Shakyamuni, world-honored one, all you had is the truth. At the time there was a bodhisattva and mahasattva in great joy of preaching, who understood the doubts that were in the minds of the heavenly and human beings, asuras and other beings of all the worlds. He said to the Buddha, world on, for what reason has this treasure tower risen up out of the earth, and why does this voice issue from its midst? At the time the Buddha said, great joy of preaching in the breath is a complete body of a thus come one long ago, an immeasurable 1,000, 10,000 million asamkayas of worlds to the east, in a land called treasure purity. There was a Buddha named many treasures. When this Buddha was originally practicing the bodhisattva way, he made a great vow, saying, if after I have become a Buddha, entered extinction in the lands in the 10 directions, there is any place where the Lotus Sutra is preached in my very tower, in order that I may listen to the sutra, will come forth and appear in that spot to testify its excellence. At the time the world honored one spoke to the assembly and said, this holy Lord, this world honored one, though he passed into extinction long ago, still seats himself in the treasure tower, coming here for the sake of the law. You people, why then do you not also strive for the sake of the law? This Buddha passed into extinction an endless number of kalpas ago. The many places he comes to listen to the law, because such opportunities are hard to encounter. This Buddha originally made a vow, saying, after I have passed into extinction, wherever I may, whatever place my constant aim will be to hear the law. In addition, these emanations of my body, Buddhas in immeasurable numbers like Genji sands, have come desiring to hear the law, and so they may treasures thus come on who has passed into extinction. Each has abandoned his wonderful land as disciples, the heavenly and human beings, dragons and spirits, and all the offerings they give him, and has come to this place on purpose to make certain the law will long endure. In order to see these Buddhas employ transcendental powers, moving immeasurable multitudes, causing lands to be clean and pure. Land of these Buddhas to the foot of a jewel tree, adorned as lotus blossoms, and a clear cool pond beneath these jewel trees are lion seats, and the Buddhas seat themselves on them, adoring their brilliance like a huge torch burning in the darkness of the night. A wonderful incense exudes from their bodies, pervading the lands in the 10 directions. Living beings are wrapped in the aroma, unable to restrain their joy as though a great windward the branches of small trees. Through this expedient means they make certain that the law will long endure. So I say to the great assembly, after I have passed into extinction, who can guard and uphold, read and recite this sutra now in the presence of the Buddha? Let him come forward and speak this vow. This many treasures Buddha, though he passed into extinction, because of his great vow rose a lion's roar. Many treasures thus come on, I myself and these emanation Buddhas who have gathered here surely know this is our aim. You sons of the Buddha who can guard the law, let him make a great vow to ensure that it will long endure. He who is full of guarding the law of this sutra will thereby have offered alms to me into many treasures. This many treasures Buddha, dwelling in his treasure tower, journeys constantly throughout the 10 directions for the sake of this sutra. Guards this sutra will also have offered alms to the emanation Buddhas who have come here, adorning and making brilliant all the various worlds. If one preaches this sutra to see me, and many treasures thus come on, and these emanation Buddhas, all you good men, each of you must consider carefully. This is a difficult matter, it is proper you should make a great vow. The other sutras number as many kanji sands, but though you expound those sutras, this is not worth regarding as difficult. If you were to seize Mount Sumeru, bring it far off to the measureless Buddha lands, that too would not be difficult. If you use the toe of your foot to move the 1,000 million full world far away to other lands, that too would not be difficult. If you stood in the summit of being heaven, and for the sake of the assembly preach countless other sutras, that too would not be difficult. But if the Buddha has entered extinction in the time of evil, you can preach the sutra, that will be difficult indeed. If there were a person who took the empty sky in his hand and walked all around with it, that would not be difficult. If after I have passed into extinction, one can write out and embrace the sutra and call others to write it out, that will be difficult indeed. If one took the great earth, placed it on his toenail, and ascended difficult, but if after the Buddha has passed into extinction in the time of evil, one can even for a little while read the sutra, that will be difficult indeed if when the fires come. End of the kalpa, one can load dry grass on his back and enter the fire without being burned. That would not be difficult, but after I have passed into extinction, one can embrace the sutra and expound it to even one person. That would be difficult indeed if one were to embrace the storehouse of 84,000 doctrines of religions of the sutras and expound it to others, causing listeners to acquire the 6 transcendental powers. So one could do that, that would not be difficult, but I have entered extinction. Listen to and accept the sutra and ask about its meaning. That will be difficult indeed if a person expounds the law, allowing thousands and thousands, millions, immeasurable numbers of living beings to Ganji sense to become arhats endowed with the 6 transcendental powers. So one might confer such benefits. That would not be difficult, but after I have entered extinction, if one and embrace a sutra such as this one, that would be difficult indeed for the sake of the Buddha way. In immeasurable numbers of plants from beginning until now, I have widely preached many sutras, and among them the sutra is foremost. If one can uphold this, he will be upholding you, good man. After I have entered extinction, you can accept and uphold, read and recite the sutra. Now in the presence of the Buddha, let him come forward and speak his vow. The sutra is hard to uphold. If one can uphold it even for a short while, surely rejoice, and so will the other Buddhas. A person who can do this wins the admiration of the Buddhas. This is what is meant by valor. This is what is meant by diligence. This is what is called observing the precepts and practicing dutta. This way quickly attain the unsurpassed Buddha way. And if in the future existences one can read and uphold the sutra, he will be a true son of the Buddha, dwelling land spotless and good. If after the Buddha has passed into extinction, one can understand the meaning of the sutra, he will be the eyes of the world for heavenly and human beings. If in that fearful age one can preach the sutra, a moment he will deserve to receive alms from all heavenly and human beings. Let's go to tab 9, page 171. Heart of the Prajna Paramita, the Bodhisattva Avadokita, while moving in the deep course of Prajna Paramita, shed light on the flat skandhas and found them equally empty. After this penetration, he overcame ill-being. Listen, Shariputra, form is emptiness. Emptiness is form. Form is not other than emptiness. Emptiness is not other than form. The same is true with feelings, perception, both formations and consciousness. Listen, Shariputra, all dharmas are marked with emptiness. They are neither produced nor destroyed, neither defiled nor immaculate, neither increasing nor decreasing. In emptiness there is neither form nor feelings, no perceptions nor mental formations or consciousness, no eye or ear or nose or tongue or body or mind, no form, no sound, no smell, no taste, no touch, no object of mind, no realms of things, no interdependent origin and no extinction of them, no ill-being, no cause of ill-being, no end of ill-being, and no path, no understanding, no attainment, because there is no the Bodhisattvas ground in Prajna Paramita find no obstacles for their minds. Having no obstacles, they overcome fear, liberating themselves forever, realizing perfect nirvana. All Buddhas in the past, present, and future arrive at Anuttara Samyak Sambodhi. Therefore one should know that perfect understanding is the highest mantra, the unequaled mantra, destroyer of ill-being, the incorruptible truth, the mantra samgate bodhiswa, tegate paragate para samgate bodhiswa. Sentient beings are limitless, I vow to liberate them. Afflictions are endless, I vow to eradicate them. Teachings are infinite, I vow to learn them. Buddhahood is supreme, I vow to attain. I vow that from now until the end of my life and in all future lives until I attain Anuttara Samyak Sambodhi, that I will help sentient beings in all realms of existence and their suffering. Namo Buddhas, come one worthy of offerings, a proper and universal knowledge, perfect understanding and conduct, skillful in leaving the world through liberation, perfect and complete understanding of all worldly dharma, unsurpassed night taming hero, teacher of gods and people, Buddha, the world honored one. Namo Shakyamuni Buddha, Namo Buddha, Namo Shakyamuni Buddha, Namo Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva, Namo Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva, Namo Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva, Namo Mahasamaprapta Bodhisattva, Namo Mahasamaprapta Bodhisattva, Namo Mahasamaprapta Bodhisattva, Namo Shittigarbha Bodhisattva, Namo Shittigarbha Bodhisattva, Namo Shittigarbha Bodhisattva, Namo Manjushri Bodhisattva, Namo Manjushri Bodhisattva, Namo Manjushri Bodhisattva, Namo Samantabhadra Bodhisattva, Namo Samantabhadra Bodhisattva, Namo Samantabhadra Bodhisattva, Namo Maitreya Bodhisattva, Namo Maitreya Bodhisattva, Bodhisattva, Namo great pure sea like Bodhisattvas, Namo great pure sea like Bodhisattvas, Namo great pure sea like Bodhisattvas, Namo Deva guarding Bodhisattvas, Namo Deva guarding Bodhisattvas, Deva guarding Bodhisattvas. I take refuge in the Buddha, the one who shows me the way in this life. I take refuge in the Dharma, the way of understanding and of love. I take refuge in the Sangha, the community that lives in harmony and awareness. Dwelling in the refuge of Buddha, I clearly see the path of light and beauty in the world. Dwelling the refuge of Dharma, I learn to open many on the path of transformation. Dwelling in the Sangha, shining light that supports me, keeping my practice free of obstruction. Taking refuge in the Buddha, in myself I aspire to help all recognize their own awakened nature, realizing the mind of love, taking refuge in the Dharma. In myself I aspire to help all people fully master the ways of practice and walk together on the path of liberation, taking refuge in the Sangha. In myself I aspire to help all build fourfold communities to embrace all beings and support their transformation. Reciting the sutras, practicing the way of awareness, gives rise to benefits without limit. We vow to share the fruits with all beings. We vow to